Hey everyone, I'm Kevin, a commercial photographer based in California, and today I'll be reviewing Dehancer, which is a suite of plugins that helps you emulate the look of film for photo and video. And the big question I'll be asking today is whether or not Dehancer can help you achieve a consistent filmic look across your photo and video work. Now, full disclosure, Dehancer did provide the plugins for me to check out, but my opinions and evaluation are completely independent, and my goal is to provide an honest opinion of how Dehancer works in different scenarios. So, let's get started. Alright, we are in Lightroom, so we have a few photos that were taken on the Fuji X106. Now, Dehancer does recommend that you adjust some parameters to get the images into kind of a flat log state before you bring it into their app. So you can see I've made some of those adjustments here, like bringing down the contrast, bringing up the black point. Dehancer does have a pretty thorough manual detailing these recommended settings, so I will leave you to check that out when you get the app. But in the meantime, we are going to bring this photo here into the Dehancer interface. All right, we are in Dehancer, and so the first thing we'll do is just pick our film stock. So I am feeling like Kodak Portra 160. So I'll scroll down into the Kodak section and pick Kodak Portra 160. So if we just turn that on and off, you can see what it's doing to the image. Pretty cool. Now on the right side, we have our source panel. So you can make basic adjustments to the image here, like exposure, temperature, tint, and so forth. This could be a little bit warmer, so I'll adjust that here. Great. And it is looking a little bit green to me, so I will offset that by adding a little bit of pink. Great, we can work with that. So our next panel is the film developer panel. And we can bring in some contrast here, which this image needs it because, like we mentioned earlier, it was basically in a flat state when we brought it into Dehancer, and that looks good to my eye there. You can also make a gamma correction here. It's kind of acting like an exposure dial, but I like where it's at right now. Color separation, which seems to add a bit of selective density. And speaking of selective density, we have our color boost here, which acts more like a saturation slider, and I tend to not reach for this one as much, but since this did start off in a flat state, it does need some contrast, and I'm going to make sure not to take this too far. Otherwise, it looks a little too garish to my taste, but yeah, that looks good right there. Next is film compression, which emulates the highlight detail information that film can capture. So you can see if we just move the impact slider left and right, you can see that we're bringing back the detail, especially in this upper portion here of the brighter parts of the image, which is kind of cool. So we get that filmic dynamic range. I tend to prefer a little bit more contrast, but I still want some of that highlight detail back, so I'm going to bring this down just slightly, and that looks good to me. Yeah. And so you can also adjust your white points and the tonal range here, and you can also add color density, which don't mind if I do, because we certainly love density of colors here. So yeah, looks great. Love it. Now expand, which you can use to further adjust the contrast of your image, but we're not going to worry about that for this photo. Now we get into the print section, and we have a few options that we can choose from. Linear, Cineon film log, which is more applicable to DaVinci Resolve. Kodak 2383, good old 2383, and then Kodak Endura Glossy Paper. I tend to gravitate towards Kodak Endura Glossy Paper for photos, but let's see what 2383 looks like. Oh, that's pretty nice. I kind of like that. So let's keep that, and you can make more adjustments here. You'll start to see a theme where a lot of these sliders are kind of copied over into other panels, so you can really dial in the look that you're going for. Let's again reach for a color density slider because again, we love it. I love how deep and rich the colors are getting here. We love that filmic saturation, that subtractive saturation. Now our next panel is our color head panel, which you can use to adjust the red, green, and blue channels to your liking, whether you want to make any corrections or make any creative color casts. You can also adjust your shadows tone, your midtones tone, your highlights, so on and so forth. Now we get into our film grain section. And as I mentioned before, we're working with Kodak Portra 160. So we're going to try to find something that fits that film grain profile, and 35mm ISO 250 is the closest one we have there. So we'll work with that. If you want to dial in your grain, you can go into custom here and adjust to your heart's content. But in the meantime, I feel like 35mm ISO 250 is working great for this image. Now we have good old halation if you want to add that into your image. I don't personally, but it's there if you'd like, and that adds a nice little bit of color fringing to our image. Then we have bloom, which softens up our highlights. I don't necessarily think this image needs it, so I'm going to check that off. We also have film damage, if that's what you want to add onto your image. I don't think this image needs it, nor was that the creative vision I had. So we'll turn that off, but it's there if you'd like to use it. And then we have overscan, which is a new feature that was just recently added to this beta of Dehancer, which emulates the look of overscan on motion picture film, though I hope Dehancer releases some type of overscan feature as if you were scanning photographic film. But if you want to add that motion picture overscan, you can definitely do that here. For this image, I don't think it needs it, so we'll turn that off, but it's a nice thing to have and experiment with if that's what your creative intent is. And then we have vignette if that's what you want to add, and at least for this image, I don't think it needs it, but if you want to make that adjustment, you can certainly do that in Dehancer. And once you're happy with your edits, you'll click OK, and then it will bring it back into Lightroom. All right, we're back in Lightroom, and we can see that Dehancer has brought over the adjustments that we made. And so let's compare with our starting image, and it looks great. So Dehancer unfortunately doesn't have a easy bulk editing solution at this point because they're very limited in what parameters they could even adjust in Lightroom to achieve the effects that you're looking for. But Dehancer does remember your previous edits, so let's just say we're going to edit this image here. And you can see that Dehancer has copied over our previous edits onto this image, and then you can make any adjustments as needed. So I'll bring up the exposure just slightly. And then all you do is click OK, and then it will also bring it into Lightroom. So then you'd essentially repeat this process with every image that you'd want to have in that same look. So with that in mind, we are going to go into DaVinci Resolve and edit some clips that were also taken on the Fuji X100VI. All right, we are in DaVinci Resolve, and I have a few clips that were taken on the Fujifilm X100VI here. And I have a node-based color management workflow going. So I am taking Fujifilm F-Log, which is what these clips were filmed in, and I am transforming those clips into DaVinci Wide Gamut and DaVinci Intermediate. Each of those clips has their own template node tree built into them for basic adjustments. And then I'm feeding all of that into Dehancer, which is then feeding this color space transform, which is then turning it into a Rec 709 and Rec 709A color space and gamma. So let's take a look at Dehancer. So we're going to change our source to DaVinci Resolve Wide Gamut and Intermediate. And this interface will look pretty familiar. A lot of the same panels that we just saw in the Dehancer photo interface are brought over here. And so you can make those same adjustments. And what I'm going to do to save us time is to bring in all the adjustments that I made in the photo version of Dehancer and try to get us to a similar look in DaVinci Resolve. All right, so I've made my adjustments, and I did have to make some clip level adjustments to get everything to match up, but let's compare with what we did in the Dehancer photo app and in Lightroom, and I must say they're looking pretty darn close. So in terms of photo and video taken on the same camera, it's looking pretty good. So I am impressed. It took a little bit of finessing, but I think we got something that really, really is consistent. So let's move on to the next scenario where the cameras don't match between photo and video. We are back in Lightroom, and we have a few photos that were taken on the Fuji GFX 50S, and we will be editing some video footage that was shot on the Canon R5. So we're basically going to do the same process that we did with our previous batch of photos and videos. We're going to get the image back into a quasi-log state, and we'll bring it into Dehancer to edit. All right, we are back in Dehancer, and we're just going to do the same process that we did with our previous photos. So we're going to pick our film stock, and I'm feeling Fuji Pro 400H, a classic stock. Fantastic. Already like what it's doing. So we're going to make some adjustments in our source panel here. Let's keep exposure where it is right now. It is a little bit high contrast, but we're going to play around with that. I do want to warm it up just a smidge. There we go. That's good. Our tint, I feel like, is good. We're going to go into our film developer, bring in some contrast, because again, we started off pretty flat. And we're starting to really notice the harsh midday sun here, but we'll correct that later in our film compression. In the meantime, let's bring it up in terms of color boost, because we like a little bit more saturation, but not too much to where it's starting to look a little garish. All right, now we'll go into our film compression. Oh, wow. I really like what that did there. It kind of knocked things down a peg and made it a little bit easier for our eyes to look at. Let's play around with the impact and see how it does. Ooh. Yeah, I really love what it's doing with the highlights. And let's play around with our color density a little bit. I think we're good there. I think I'm going to bring down the impact just a little bit because I want just a smidge of contrast. And we're going to go into our expand. I want to bring down that black point right there. So let's try it out. Moving it to the right brings the black point down. So let's just experiment with that so we can really dial in our contrast. And that looks great. So I'm going to keep it in Kodak Endura glossy paper. We really want to go for photographic prints right now. And color head, I don't think there's anything we need to do here, so we'll turn that off. Film grain, so, let's see. When we're bringing in the film grain, it does start to affect the luminance values, which is to be expected now that I think about it. So since this was shot on the GFX 50S, which is a medium format digital camera, maybe let's try something like 65mm ISO 500 to get us close to that 400 speed. And it's very, very, very subtle. So let's just try a couple of other options right now. 65, and let's finesse this a little bit. Maybe with just the amounts. Yeah, that's okay for right now. And because the film grain did start to affect the luminance values, I'm going to bring down the black point just a little bit more because I really want that contrast in this image. Okay, that looks good. No halation, no bloom, no film damage, no overscan. I think we're good for right now. Let's check out the vignette just to see what it does. Now, it's doing a little bit too much with the image. Okay, that looks great, and I'm going to click OK. It's going to save it in Lightroom, and then we're going to go into DaVinci Resolve and see if we can get this all matched up. All right, we are in DaVinci Resolve, and I have the same node-based color managed workflow as last time, but this time I'm feeding it Canon Cinema Gamut and Canon Log 3, which are the settings that I used when I shot this on the Canon R5. And I've copied over a lot of our settings from Dehancer Photo into the Dehancer Video version, and we're looking pretty close to what we did photo-wise. So let's just make some basic level adjustments on the clip level. So I'm going to bring up the exposure a little bit more here, maybe half a stop. Looks good. This one I think also needs a little bit more exposure, maybe 3/4 of a stop. This one is good, maybe a little bit more. Maybe half a stop. Yeah. Or a backlit, so. And wow, I am quite impressed with what I'm seeing right now. I do think we need to make some adjustments color temperature wise. Let's see, maybe we can do that on a global level. Yeah, I think we could probably do that on a global level. So the good thing about Dehancer is that not only can you create a look, but you can make some basic corrections in the input side or the source side. So maybe I just warm it up just a smidge to get it to where we had it, and that's already doing a lot. Does a lot of the heavy lifting. Maybe I'll bring it down just a smidge. So yeah, if you want to make global adjustments, if you know that all of your clips need this type of adjustment, then this is a great way to do it without having to copy that adjustment in every single clip. So looking quite good. So between two different camera manufacturers, we're getting a very consistent look here. So what we're going to do in our final scenario is what I think is the litmus test. We're going to try to match actual film scans with video footage that was shot on the Canon R5. All right, we are back in Lightroom, and I have a few film scans here. All of these were taken on the Mamiya 645-1000S. You might recognize these from a previous video. And all of these have been brought into a normalized state in terms of color balance and contrast. I didn't do anything too crazy to them. And now we're going to see whether or not Dehancer can help us match our film scans to our photo and video work. So let's give that a try. I have a few clips in DaVinci Resolve that were shot on the Canon R5, so let's head over to DaVinci now. All right, we are back in DaVinci Resolve, and same thing applies. I have a node-based color management workflow going. I also have template node trees built into all of our clips for basic adjustments, and I've already made those adjustments to get these into a relatively normalized state, all being fed into Dehancer and then being transformed out to Rec 709. So I'm going to change this to DaVinci Wide Gamut and DaVinci Intermediate. And the photos that I took were taken on Kodak Portra 400, so I'm going to select that stock here. Looking great so far. Already liking what I'm seeing, but we are going to need to make some global adjustments to get it to where we want it. So let's go into our film developer, enable it, pull up the contrast, which will consequently help bring some color into our image. Lovely. And let's also bring up the color boost just to add a smidge more saturation. Fantastic. Film compression. Yeah, I'm already liking what that's doing there. I think where it's at right now is quite good. Black point is good, white point is good. Print, we're going to choose Kodak Endura Glossy Paper for that photographic look. And I'm already liking what I'm seeing. Color density, maybe just a smidge, just a little bit. And I kind of want to bring the contrast down because I feel like it's a little bit too much for what we're trying to do here. There, that looks good. Great. Color head, we don't have to worry about. Film grain. Like I mentioned, it was Kodak Portra 400, so let's choose something along that line. And it was medium format, so we're gonna go 65mm ISO 500 gets us close. And yeah, very subtle, but it's there and will get us to where we need to go. No halation, no bloom, no film damage, none of that. And we're good to go. So let's look through the rest of our clips. Looking great, looking really great. I'm going to bring up the exposure just a smidge on this one. Maybe something like that. Oh, that looks awesome. That looks really great. Maybe I'll also bring this up just a smidge. Wow, that looks fantastic. So let's compare with our film scans, and wow, I am quite impressed with what I'm seeing right now. Can make some very macro level adjustments, like say we can warm this guy up just a little bit. It maybe consequently brings some pink into it. So let's see. Yeah, I can probably bring a little bit more in, but I think for right now, that's pretty darn close. So let's keep on going. Yeah. Really close. Wow. Yeah, that is fantastic. And you can finesse these and really dial it in if you want, but in terms of matching, I mean, we are so close. That's incredible. So I'm impressed. I'm very impressed. I really appreciate that Dehancer not only creates looks, but can help you maintain a consistent look between your film, your photo, and your video work. That is pretty great. So my final thoughts, I am quite impressed with how Dehancer can create a consistent look across your photo, video, and film work, and I would highly recommend you check that out if that's something that you need in your work. So if you made it this far into the video, I have a special code just for you in the description below that gives you 10% off your Dehancer product purchase. In the meantime, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more videos, and I will see you all again soon.